Air India Flight 171 was scheduled as a long-haul journey. It was meant to connect Ahmedabad, India, with London Gatwick in the United Kingdom. For the crew and the hundreds of passengers on board, it was supposed to be a standard, uneventful flight. The aircraft was a modern Boeing 787-8 Dreamliner, a jet known for its advanced technology and excellent safety record. These planes fly international routes like this every single day, all around the world. The flight was prepared for its departure, with passengers settled in and the crew running through their final pre-flight checklists, anticipating a smooth trip across continents. The date was June 12, 2025. This day would become a dark chapter in India's aviation history. Shortly after taking off from Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel International Airport in Ahmedabad, the flight ended in disaster. The aircraft crashed just moments after its wheels left the runway. The catastrophic event took place close to the airport, turning a hopeful departure into a scene of devastation. The crash was not survivable for anyone on board. All 270 people, including passengers and crew, tragically lost their lives, sending shockwaves through the nation and the global aviation community. The initial moments of the flight are critical. This phase is known as the takeoff and initial climb. It is a period where the aircraft is heavy with fuel and flying at a low altitude, leaving very little room for error. Flight 171 began its takeoff roll down the runway as planned. The pilots would have been accelerating to a critical speed known as V1. This is the go or no-go speed. Before reaching V1, a takeoff can be safely aborted. After passing V1, the aircraft is committed to becoming airborne, even if a problem occurs. Flight 171 passed this point of no return just as its troubles began. What started as a normal takeoff quickly turned into a life-threatening emergency. One of the aircraft's two powerful engines sustained damage during the takeoff roll. However, the engine did not fail completely until after the aircraft had passed the crucial V1 speed. Because they were past this point, the pilots had no choice but to continue with the takeoff. Their training would have prepared them for an engine failure during this phase. The procedure is demanding, but manageable. The aircraft is designed to fly and climb safely on just one engine, but what happened next was not part of any standard procedure. Once Air India Flight 171 was in the air, the pilots faced a serious situation. They were flying a heavy aircraft with one engine failing. The cockpit is a high-pressure environment during an emergency, and decisions must be made quickly and accurately. The pilot flying the aircraft correctly identified that one engine was losing power and began to counteract its effects. The standard procedure is to maintain control, climb to a safe altitude, and then secure the failed engine. This involves shutting down the fuel supply to the damaged engine to prevent fire or further damage. The crew's actions in these first few seconds are absolutely critical. Tragically, a fatal mistake was made under this immense pressure. While the pilot flying was focused on controlling the aircraft, the monitoring pilot was responsible for executing the emergency checklist. It appears that a critical miscommunication or a moment of confusion led to a catastrophic error. Instead of shutting down the damaged engine, the monitoring pilot mistakenly shut off the fuel supply to the fully functional working engine. This single action effectively left the massive Boeing 787 with no engine power at all. At a low altitude of around 400 feet, this was a devastating turn of events. With both engines now silent, the aircraft lost its ability to generate thrust and climb. It essentially became a very heavy glider. To make matters worse, another crucial step was missed in the chaos. The pilots, understandably distracted by the dual engine failure, forgot to retract the landing gear. With the landing gear down, the aircraft experienced significantly more drag. This extra resistance made it impossible for the plane to maintain its altitude or speed. It was now losing height rapidly, with no power and high drag, leaving the pilots with almost no options. In the final moments, the aircraft was unable to stay in the air. The nose of the plane was seen to pitch up just before it hit the ground. This was likely a last desperate attempt by the pilots to reduce the forward speed and lessen the energy of the impact. By raising the nose, they tried to sacrifice the aircraft to save the people on the ground and potentially soften the crash. However, at such a low altitude and with no power, a safe landing was impossible. The aircraft stalled and crashed, leading to the complete loss of the plane and everyone on board. Several contributing factors made this terrible situation even worse. One significant issue was the aircraft's weight. On the day of the crash, Air India Flight 171 was reportedly overloaded. It was carrying a weight of around 70 tons, which is substantially heavier than the typical payload of 62 tons for a flight of this nature. This extra weight had a major impact on the aircraft's performance. A heavier plane needs more power and a longer runway to take off. It also struggles to climb, especially if an engine fails. The overloading created a rushed and high-stress environment from the very beginning of the takeoff roll. The sequence of a single engine failure followed by the shutdown of the good engine is a known, though rare, type of pilot error. However, a complete dual-engine failure on a modern aircraft like the Boeing 787 is almost unheard of. This type of plane is built with multiple redundancies and incredibly reliable engines. The statistical probability of two independent engines failing at the same time is extremely low. This is why the incident was so shocking to the aviation world. The failure was not due to a simultaneous mechanical fault, but a combination of one failure and one human error, which is a different but equally devastating scenario. Flight simulations conducted after the crash helped to illustrate just how dire the situation was. When recreating the scenario with the reported overload, simulations showed the aircraft struggling to lift off at the normal point on the runway. This delay would have added to the pressure on the pilots. Another simulation exploring a dual-engine failure at just 100 feet above the ground concluded that the aircraft was completely unrecoverable. This highlights that once the second engine was shut down, the fate of Flight 171 was sealed. There was simply not enough altitude or energy to save the aircraft. The combination of these factors created a perfect storm. The initial engine problem, while serious, should have been manageable. But when combined with the extreme pressure, the tragic mistake of shutting down the wrong engine, the failure to retract the landing gear, and the aircraft's heavy weight, the situation quickly became unsurvivable. Each small element added another layer to the unfolding disaster, removing any chance the crew had of recovering the aircraft. It serves as a stark reminder of how multiple, seemingly separate issues can link together to cause a catastrophe. In the wake of the tragedy, the response from India's aviation authorities was swift and decisive. The Directorate General of Civil Aviation, or DGCA, launched a full-scale investigation to uncover the root causes of the crash. The focus was not just on the pilot's actions but also on the operational culture and oversight at Air India. On June 21, 2025, just over a week after the crash, the DGCA took strong action. It initiated proceedings against 3 senior officials at the airline, citing serious and repeated violations that may have contributed to a compromised safety environment, sending a clear message that accountability was paramount. The crash also had a profound impact on pilots within the industry. Trust between flight crews and management was shaken. In the days following the incident, some pilots took a stand for safety by refusing to operate aircraft that had unresolved technical issues logged. This led to some flight delays and cancellations, but it was a powerful statement. These pilots prioritized the safety of their passengers and crew above operational schedules. Their actions were praised by many, including myself, as a courageous and necessary step to reinforce a culture where safety is not negotiable. The lessons learned from Air India Flight 171 will undoubtedly lead to changes in pilot training and cockpit procedures. The incident highlighted the intense human factors involved in handling an emergency. Training programs will likely be updated to place even more emphasis on crew resource management, especially under extreme stress. Simulators will be programmed with more complex and challenging scenarios, including this specific type of engine failure sequence, to better prepare pilots to avoid such critical errors. The goal is to build more resilient crews who can manage confusion and communicate with absolute clarity during an emergency. Ultimately, every air disaster, as tragic as it is, serves as a catalyst for improving aviation safety. The investigation into Flight 171 exposed vulnerabilities in procedures, training, and operational oversight. The subsequent regulatory actions and the renewed focus on a safety-first culture are crucial steps forward. While we mourn the 270 lives lost, the most important tribute we can pay them is to learn every possible lesson from this event. By implementing these hard-won lessons, the aviation industry can strengthen its systems and work to ensure that such a devastating cascade of events never happens again.